G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day and a fantastic end to your week. Now you will notice that this video is out much later than usual. I'm jet lagged and I hadn't slept well for about a week before. Yesterday I went for a nap this morning at about 6 a.m. 12 hours later I woke up and it was then nighttime and I had a dinner, so apologies. I'm getting a video out, but I know it will be late. I know it'll affect the algorithm. Either way, I want to put it out for you guys who rely, I guess, on the news that I'm going to read and have a look at. Now, today we need to look at some drone attacks into Crimea, both from the Ukrainian and the Russian perspective, and the claims of what has happened there and the hits. Of course, we'll have a look at the maps, but we'll all do that after we need to talk about an area in Ukraine that now has been officially then abandoned, and we need to talk about how that situation was down in Krynky on the left bank of the Dnipro River. Now, let me show you exactly where that is. So here is Ukraine in the center. Here is the capital of Kyiv. The red area is occupied since 22, the purple since 2014, and the green of areas where Russia has been either pushed out of or has withdrawn from. Now, we come down here into the south in the Kherson Oblast, and then we will look for then Krynky. So just up here, sorry, I'm a bit off on the map. I'm used to seeing this with grey zone. Now, for a long time, we questioned the effectiveness of holding this ground at Krynky. Go back through my videos, go back months and months, and I've been questioning this more and more. Let's have a look at how it looked for a number of months. It looked like this. You have a very, very small area here. Russia is on three sides. Russia, we know, in this area has a huge artillery advantage, and they're also dropping FAB guided munitions into this small, completely destroyed area where the amount of cover is absolutely limited. Now, if you listen to the most pro-Ukrainian accounts that then are creating an echo chamber, it was sold to everyone that Ukraine is holding this because they will expand the bridgehead, move armor across, and then assault Russia on the left bank of the Dnipro. And eventually that it would have ability to create a bridge, like a legitimate bridge, to move armor, artillery across. Now, we haven't seen this, obviously, because have a look at where this had held and hadn't changed for a long time. We had Syriac, I want to say a month ago at least, saying that Ukraine had left here, and that we'll talk about that because that lines up with other dates given. And then in the last 24 hours, we then see that there's been a withdrawal and a Russian success pushing through here. Now, I will say, so this green here is in Kherson. This is where Russia once was, and Russia got pushed out of here in the end of 2022. And I will say, I believe this is Ukraine's largest tactical victory of this entire war, is actually getting the Russians back from the right bank of the Dnipro to the left bank. Because for Russia to try and get any foothold on the right bank will be hugely costly. But that goes the other way as well. But with Russia having the foothold across here like they had, it puts every area across here in danger, especially Odessa with the meetup of maybe Transnistria as well. But having that, I believe, was the biggest tactical victory that has been made. Now, that has now been lost probably a number of weeks ago, and the number of losses in here appear to be very, very large. But again, this will likely be ignored, and we have seen areas like this ignored and not questioned. Like we have questioned, everyone thinks we're pricks, but question, like you've got Russians on three sides, a river behind you, the supply, the withdrawal, the medevac from here is almost impossible. But of course, people have this everything is fine approach, and this is mainly being done from those who are either avoiding the draft or are safe in countries that have then found relevance on the internet who would never actually go and fight. They're just on the internet finding relevance, hating Russians, more than questioning what is actually happening here. And I don't care if I look like a prick. I don't care if I look like I am very critical of things. I'm doing things that I think are important to the war. And also, like I always say, I'm on the side of the boys on the ground. I'm not on the side of either government. I'm not on the side of either MOD. I'm not on the side of either any media. I care about guys on the ground who are fighting, because if I were born in one or the other country, I can absolutely see how you are in that military. And I say the exact same with Afghanistan. That if I was born there, I could see how I would probably end up in that group as well. And this is exactly the same as we saw happen in Avdiivka, with soldiers left behind, wounded left behind. Anyone outspoken was instantly labelled as a Russian sympathiser, when realistically, you're probably actually on the side of the boys. Now, let's actually have a look at what is being said and what has happened down in here. Now, deep state like this has then confirmed this push back across here. But all we need to look at is the amount that may have been left here. And we talk about how effective was this to hold. This is what it looked like. Everything was just rubble. How can you hold just rubble, especially with absolutely limited armour? Now, let's have a look at what Deep State has said, what an independent investigation has said, and then what the Marines themselves who are holding this area have then also said. Now, let's have a look, this was number 2, at what Deep State said. Krynky, the Defence Forces are withdrawn, but the operation on Dnipro Islands continues. 1,050, namely 788 disappeared, so missing in action. 262 Ukrainian servicemen died during the fighting on the left bank of the Dnieper, or 4 people every day. Of course, these are the numbers over the amount of time. Now, some people say, is it much higher, is it much lower? Well, we do not know. What we do question is where these occurred. Was it occurring actually trying to go across the Dnieper River or not, or actually on the side of Krynky? As we know, there's no cover on water, and we've seen a lot of videos of then, of course, those boats being hit on the Dnieper River. And of course, we know Russia had the advantage of the FABs and the artillery and armour advantage in this direction. We've also talked about in previous videos why people may be marked missing in action rather than KIA, because MIA don't have to pay out then the amount of money to the families. And of course, it can actually go into how optics are seen and reporting up higher that KIA. Of course, going to have people missing in action as well. If you know what a 155 shell or a 500 kilogram bomb does to a body, yeah. But we've talked about that as well, of how that may be going. And I've spoken to a lot of soldiers who have then let me have statements on here about one of the main problems with missing in action is the families don't get then the money. So let's have a look at this. The operation in Krynky has been completed. I wouldn't say the operation has been completed. I don't think this was ever the actual goal of this. The night of June 17, so we're talking then a month ago, the Russians opened fire on the last dugout here. 3 have most likely died immediately. 2 died in the shooting battle. The remaining 6 were able to retreat to the island. So these are the Ukrainians pulling back, where another battle ensued. Only 1 survived, but visual contact with him was also lost. So put as MI as well. Withdrawing can be incredibly dangerous because whoever's out last, there is nothing beyond you holding back that fire. There have been many attempts by the Defence Forces to enter the village after June 17, but we do not know about them. Fighting on the islands is a new problem. Since the concentration of the enemy manpower on the left bank is very significant, over time they'll occupy most of the islands or part that is less shot at from the point of the ordinary soldier. These battles are not much easier than the same ones in Krynky. The enemy may try to make a bridgehead on the right bank. It will be purely political action and will not pose a threat, but instead you'll have to respond to it. So if you are holding in a bit of the enemy's territory, a small part on the other bank, and it's political and won't pose a threat, can't you then flip that and go, well, this was the exact same. This was political and didn't pose a threat. If you're saying that if Russia get across here, it's political and won't own a threat, well, what about on this other side? Isn't that the exact same? I don't know. And I think it does pose a threat. If Russia is able to get across here, just like when Ukraine across here, it did pose a threat. This would also pose a threat. But if you're applying logic one way, you can apply it then the other way. Returning to the topic of losses, evacuation was extremely lucky. So most of the losses are deaths. Although there are cases when people were in captivity, according to the medic, he saw bodies of Ukrainian soldiers being destroyed by rocket launchers in the streams. So getting hit in the streams as well. We've seen, of course, horrible things like this happening everywhere with drones, with rocket launchers, with guns, everything. The bridgehead, most of the nonsensical orders were associated with this Sodol commander. When he transferred from the KOS to OSUV, Corsia, where he was celebrated by the entire Marine Corps. So when he left that area, the Marine Corps then celebrated. That tells you a lot about who the commander was. Now, this is something I found interesting too. There was a grey zone on the map in the village for the entire time. We've questioned that too. Why is it not shown as blue or green? This was a requirement of the Marines because the operation could be cancelled at any moment. For a long time, none of the officials wanted to confirm the landing, but now the officials are in no hurry to tell the truth. What I will say is Deep State is a map that the requirement of the Marines, obviously then to Deep State, other maps, even pro-Russian maps, showed this as blue. That Deep State is also part of the informational battle. If it's asked by, hey, don't show this as blue, don't show it as green, and then they're not showing it, well, that shows on the map, it's not showing advancements or whatever, and it questions about the authenticity of the map and where other areas may be showing differently because of units asking for it to be shown then differently. But the officials are now in no hurry to tell the truth due to the large losses and the amount of time held here for now a loss of then this area. But of course, again, it's being sold that the amount of Russians they're taking out here were worth the risk holding it, like Bakhmut, like Avdiivka, like in many other fronts, which we don't know. We don't know the numbers. People say, well, look, the MOD is releasing they're killing 1,200 Russians a day. Where do you pull that figure from? Like, honestly, because if Russia was saying that, you'd ask the same thing. Again, apply your critical thinking both ways of why these are coming and why you believe this and not that. Has one and the other lied? Yes, of course. That's why I'm just not believing any numbers until well after the war, if then ever. So let's look at what the Marines have said and then look over some more. Defence Forces of Ukraine continue to carry out combat missions on the left bank of the Dnieper, particularly in the area of Krynky. However, really most of the main position of Ukrainian troops in the village of Krynky are a result of intense, combined and lasting enemy fire influence. Have been ruined for no reason. Well, you're in a war, massive fire, you will try and ruin any position. It should be added the village is also practically completely destroyed by enemy shelling. You'll see in a question of people questioning, why then was it held? You and I asked the same thing. Look at the area. That's an incredibly difficult area. There's no way in or out by land. It's by boat, which are also being hit. We question the tactical relevance of actually holding this, especially with everything destroyed. Where is the cover here? At the same time, Ukrainian defenders continue to occupy designated positions and whatever armors on the left bank on the Dnieper, destroying the occupiers, inflicting tangible losses to the Russian army. Like we're being told that the losses is worth whatever losses you inflict here. That may be true. It may be not. We cannot confirm this or deny this, but we can definitely question it, that if you are on an area where your artillery has to be back, you've got of course, this river running through here is incredibly hard to supply. And Russia has all this. They can bring things in by train or road to the front. They've got the artillery advantage. They're dropping in a small area 500,000 kilo bombs all the time. Well, I do question the tactical and the losses differential that may then occur here. So let's go through then this article, because this is very interesting. I saw hell and I called it Krynky. This was held by Ukrainian forces from mid-October 23 to July 24, so a very long time. During the defence of the settlement, hundreds of Ukrainian families received reports that their sons, husbands, fathers and brothers had disappeared there. Journalists found how many Ukrainian soldiers were currently missing in Krynky. We talk about several of them in the material. And God bless these guys for putting their face on this and reaching out and actually talking specifically about this. I know for a fact the reason people go anonymous is not for no reason at all. But again, Vasil here celebrated his birthday and New Year. Why did it take so long? It's just that when a boat did come after him, it was always loaded with wounded. In the Donetsk direction, it happened that an evacuation vehicle arrived within an hour. And in Krynky, we can say that immediately after the ring, the Russians on the right, Russians on the left, Russians in front, and water behind. Exactly what we've spoken about, the tactical efficiency of actually being able to hold this area. There was nowhere to retreat. It would be impossible to do in winter. The winter itself very difficult at that time in the west. There was an experienced medic who stabilised all seriously wounded soldiers, saying as soon as we had a wounded person, we immediately reported that a boat should be picked up at night. Many boats did not arrive. It happened that the boys lay with their limbs torn off for 10 days, and the boats could not come to us. We had a very experienced doctor. He tried to stabilise everyone. Only 2 did not survive. Once we were waiting for evacuees, we were gassed. We all ran out, but we didn't have time to get the medic out. He was poisoned by the gases and died. The legendary doctor who saved the wounded in Krynky, his name was Igor Sheremet, with the call sign Bogomol. So limbs lay there, cannot get evacuated for 10 days. Exactly the reasons we've spoken about holding an area like this. We tried to take all the dead to the shore to take them away, but when a boat arrives, they begin to cover them. So Russians firing on that boat. Many died there, dozens. Of course, you've got a boat on the water moving across. There's drones, both kamikaze, ISR, everywhere, moving across open ground like this. Most likely you are going to be seen on cold water. Thermal works even better than on land. Let's continue on this. A photo of a missing soldier in Krynky, door of one of the village shops around Kherson. The photograph up here. Mum, I won't say anything, but I may not be back. In various Viber chats, which is like a WhatsApp that a lot of people use in Ukraine, you can find thousands of messages from hundreds of people who are looking for their relatives in Krynky. Now, remember, I was labelled an informational terrorist and whatever other words you want to say, because I reported at one stage that there was a lot of people asking about missing sons, husbands, brothers on the front line. One of those being asked if anyone has at least some information is Oleg Kushelek, with the call sign Saint. He's 24. The guy himself is from Volyn. He got married a year ago. Svetlana's mother is trying to find out something about her son. I believe this is her son then here. He was an electrician and machinist. I don't want to say anything, but I won't come back. This is what he has said. I received a notification that my child was missing, and then it indicated that he was missing. I called the commanders. They said he had died, but they could not take his body. 2 more guys who went there with him, they also don't get in touch anymore. That evacuation is impossible. I'm looking. Some say they saw his body. Others say there was shelling. We can't find out what really happened there. And with shelling, with this, it may be impossible to ever know, especially with, we've spoken about some of the bureaucracy problems as well around some of this, as well as the situation in here that I believe there should be up higher. Ukrainians reach out to Russians to receive some of the bodies from here, if that is then possible. I called the hotline of the brigade. They told me they would call me back on April 26th. They said he had officially disappeared in Krynky. I would like to know under what circumstances. Military acquaintances said they saw Oleg lying there. Then the body was gone. The bodies of the 2 other boys who were with him were evacuated and buried, but Oleg was not. I asked his commander, I begged. They answered evacuation is not possible at the moment. His commanders tell me, calm down, put a candle. He died. And I'm a bitch, not a mother, to put a candle when I don't know if my child is alive. You could see the savagery, the brutality of this war. And, we need to report on this is happening everywhere. This is a war. It is a horrible, horrible thing. And this is why I question, we need to have a reality talk about really where is this going to go. We can't have another 5 years for a net zero change of land of the war, but just pour young men into these. Anyway, Dennis, call sign Raccoon, the commander of the assault company, the battalions of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, carries out operations in the Dnipro, said the defences and expansion of the bridgehead at Krynky was a necessary task. Otherwise, the Russians themselves would have tried to land boats on the right side. He assures there are no people in his company who could not be taken from the left bank, both wounded and killed, saying we beat up the Russians there. So saying no people in his company could not be taken from the left bank, so couldn't be moved back. According to the calculations, the Western Ozinter, call sign this, has been recording confirmed cases of destroyed equipment since the beginning of full-scale war. The losses of Ukrainian equipment in Krynky from the beginning of this campaign, October 23 and June 24th, amounted to 58 units, and Russian 271 units. Artillery above all, and also drones, of course, played then, as they say, a major role here. Especially difficult to go there in October in the winter. Of course, crossing in winter is going to be insanely hard. Some of the participants in the Krynky landings believe that initially it was possible to defend the village and try to expand the bridgehead. But when the village was completely wiped out and only ruins remained, and then sometime at the end of winter, the task maintaining these positions became a one-way road for many. The journalists managed to find out from police how many Ukrainian soldiers went missing in one village of Krynka, Kherson region. On the left bank of the Dnipro, 788 men wanted as officially missing. There were between October 23 and the June 24. At the same time, the number of dead soldiers who managed to be removed from there and eventually buried is much smaller, 262 defenders during this period. Again, these are numbers from here. We will wait and see what actually comes in the following years and or months exactly. But this is the tactical objective here, and we have questioned this for a long time, like the guys say, that you had Russians on 3 sides, may have been possible while there was still a village to defend, but once that is gone, if you've got no way out, no way to get a lot of equipment in to help, how is this going to occur? And like we said, no matter how far this bridgehead then would expand, at some point you need to then get artillery across the bank. Is that then possible? Was it done for optics, for politics, like they say? Like Deep State say, who ties, of course, with the MOD, that if the Russians get on the other side, it will be purely political, it won't have any objective. Well, doesn't that apply the other way as well? Anyway. Before we have a look at the map, so I just want to talk about this drone attack that has happened in Crimea, again by Ukrainian unmanned drones. Now, this footage will be fully on the Telegram if you'd like to go and watch it. Again, we can see some explosions here, but we don't really have an idea exactly what then was hit. But we do have some interesting footage from the Russian side as well. Of course, this footage is nowhere near as clear as other footage we've seen then before of these drone attacks. So you can see the amount of fire being put onto these drones by the Russian Navy as well, both helicopter, ships, and ground fire. We get this really poor footage here coming in. But what it looks like here, this just looks like a speedboat to me, or a dock. Like, this is a life ring. I think this is maybe a ladder, or the front, like where the steering bloody wheel would be on a boat. But it's definitely not like taking out a massive ship. We have actually seen the effectiveness of these drone boats, at least in my opinion, have been significantly less recently than before. Before we saw major ships being hit and taken out. The last two were just like small speedboats, or maybe a tugboat opposed to these large Navy ships. But from the SBU, we may get more footage, and I may be wrong. They successfully targeted Russian coastal defence base in Crimea, where the Russian naval forces were conducting an exercise. Thanks to SBU, these exercises became a failure because the Russians were unable to then protect their base. So we're not exactly sure what was hit. But they're saying the attack used aerial naval drones to attack the base, damaging the headquarters and its control point, a warehouse of ammunition and equipment, the electrical substation, and enemy firing position. So we know from the footage there's definitely explosions, but we're not exactly sure. The Russians have released then this footage here, looking to be either early in the morning or late at night by where the sun is, of then massive fire from at least multiple different positions, but this one from a helicopter. You can see there's fire from other directions, and have definitely successfully engaged then one of these, then burning up in the water. And this is what we spoke about when we spoke to my friend in the Navy about what would you do about this, and it's get it away from the boat. You need to have it hit far away by a chopper or something. If it's in range of the boat, way too dangerous. And this is what then fighter bombers said. A machine gunner on board had me 8 to stop the Beck from moving point. It was then destroyed by joint fire. And you can see the crossing of fire, both in the footage given by Ukraine, the footage put out by Russian pages then as well. Now, let's then have a look at the maps. So, of course, we showed you what happened down in Krynky. Now, there's been no changes along through Robotny or through Urazani. We get 2 map updates today, but no changes there. Just then in Ugledar, we know this is an area where we need to keep a watch. We know the supply in here has been limited due to this fall of Mariinka Pobeda, but of course very slow. That we do see just on the first update, just an expansion of grey zone here. So we know there's been a shift, but maybe just grey zone. Noel reports also shows then this amount of grey zone shift in here, but his is showing that the Russians, to my eye, are closer then to this road that's running through here than the deep state map is showing there. Now, I do not believe... I do have, a Syriac map. Now, Syriac is showing, to my eye as well, actually a lot closer to what Noel reports is saying. So he's saying in this area here and down this area, see where this paddock has this like tree line in here. So, saying situation southwest of Donetsk. During the last days, Russian army made new advances southwest of Vladimir-Ivka, reaching the road between Ugledar and Konstantinivka. So showing that Konstantinivka, Ugledar, reaching this road. Of course, whether they have reached or not, or if this is under fire control, this is one of the supply routes through a lot of these areas that is then being, of course, maybe threatened and or cut off. The Russian troops reached this but failed to gain a foothold there. However, the latest developments of Russian forces less than a mile away from it, which prevents proper supply. So they're not there, but if you're very close to it, of course, that does threaten proper supply. Now, I just want to look in Krasnoyarivka. No changes in here then today. Where are we going to move up to next? Let's then go to the Avdiivka front. Now, let's turn this on. I wish you could turn that on and actually go back separate days. I don't believe you can. But then we see on the first map update, that's not going to work for me. So between the 17th, then to the 18th, number 1, 18th, number 2, we just see an expansion of grey zone near Prohez here, which is where other maps showed some amount of shifting here. Then we reported on this yesterday, but no actual red zone shift by the deep state map. But we know there has been a lot of talk around this Osharetny bush to try and get to these roads here, to try and do the exact same thing, of course, down in Ugledar. Now, what you can see here is then Noel reports has updated his map to show further Russian expansion here. That said, it's only showing in this reservoir in here. So it's showing less than the deep state map itself. On this case, I will go with the deep state due to the ties in with the MOD. Now let's have a look around here then on Syriac's map. So let's get an idea. We'll try and zoom in to line this up a bit better. So to give you an idea, a bit of map to ground, this reservoir is this reservoir down in here. So it is saying that the Russians have closed up a lot of the control between this Luzovsky and then the Ostroretny front. So this is closed up through here. That's what it's saying on this map. And have also expanded out to the north here. Again, doing what we call the girth maneuver, the sausage up, girth out, sausage up, girth out, to try to limit the effectiveness of maybe getting cut off in the rear. And we have seen this occurring from Avdiivka all the way, Ostroretny, and all the way to where it is now, that working then effectively for then the Russians. So saying they took over some positions there. Let's see if these maps update in the next couple of days. Now, New York, Turetsky front, let's have a look. See, only a grey zone shift in here over the past few days. Sorry, that's back on the 17th. So yeah, only a grey zone shift in here. I don't believe I have any map. No, I don't. Now, let's push up into Bakhmut. Now, this is where we do see an interesting change. Let's turn on this. Let's go back one and turn on that. Okay, here we are. So this is the Chasiv Yar micro district. This is Boronivka, Kalinivka, that Russians have had an advancement confirmed in here as well. So let's get an idea. You can see from the 17th and then that advancement in here. So we know that is definitely confirmed and moved and then further acknowledged. Let's have a look on Syriac's. So he's showing in basically then the same direction, but he's showing a lot more control around this Herovka, just up to the north of here, but does show this around Kalinivka. So this is being confirmed, or is confirmed across both, but also just to the north of here, he is saying that then there is more. But the Russian army took control over new positions south-east of Herovka and most eastern part of Kalinivka until the water canal. The situation around the northern hill and warehouses remains unclear, but due to the bad situation of the Ukrainian army there, it's very possible that the position was vacated as well. What we've talked about is crossing this water canal, much like the Dnipro, but of course this is much, much narrower, is going to be a large struggle for the Russians to try and get this, and I do believe they may try and push a lot of these other areas up to then the canal before then they make that leap, or attempted leap, then across. Now, Syriac says this about that after the capture of the canal microdistrict, Russian army continues to seize the remaining positions of the Ukrainian army on the eastern bank of the water canal, like we said, which includes the eastern part of Kalinivka. The progress will continue to the north direction of Herovka. The objective is to achieve the crossing of the canal through positions farther in the north to order and initiate a subsequent assault on Chasiv Yar from there. Still, Russian troops are already working on the trench systems west of the city to start an assault from other areas of the complicated front. The Battle of Chasiv Yar is far from over. So what his assessment is that they'll try and move up to the canal in, say, the north here. As you can see, the north here does sit at least to the centre or the last 2/3 of Chasiv Yar to try and close this. Where's my little thing? If they can get up to the canal in here and potentially either have fire control from here or assault into the south, if they can get across down in here somewhere as well, then you're looking at the envelopment of Chasiv Yar, building trench systems in here, maybe then to have fire and help for then a further push here. But again, this is going to be very slow if possible in here, but we do continue seeing that grind. We hadn't seen much move in there for a while. Now let's have a look in here. We just see a very small grey zone shift around Rozdelivkia, but we do know there has been, because we see a grey zone shift, we know there's been some level of shift, and then we see Syriac showing in the same area, just above Rozdelivka here around the train line, then a shift in his red zone and grey zone. So we know there has been definitely some change there. What Syriac shows is that this grey is actually then red. Of course, this grey moved in the same direction. So again, we'll wait and see what then shifts. Now come up into north. Now there's no change up here if I am correct. No, not the last couple of days. But around Kislivkia here, Syriac says there has been some shift out. So let's have a look. This is in the railway line. So he's saying just out of here, there has been a westerly push by the Russians. Russian army had new advance along the railway. Of course, again, trying to reach this road. Again, in this front, the main objective is Kupiansk, center hub for so much of this. Now, Vovchansky in here. Now, no shifts in here over the past few days. Again, Laboki, let's see. No changes in here the past few days, but we do know Ukraine is pushing in both areas, having success primarily on then the westerly push here on Laboki as well. Let's look at then what Syriac says in here.
Deep State, again, is just showing this as grey, not blue. Other maps are showing it as blue. I do question whether it's a very similar situation, maybe to what happened down in Krynky. Kharkiv axis, Ukrainian army took control over the trenches north of the warehouses of Holoboki, while Russian army retook over the first buildings from the east. So saying that just in this area here, Russia took some ground back and that Ukraine has taken some more in the north. So both have had an advancement in here. I do believe Ukraine is trying to use this Kharkiv reservoir here, trying to use this as a natural barrier to have a swing sort of hook maneuver flanker, probably more of a hook, I guess, same, around Holoboki to try and push out the Russians in this of the northern push, or at least try and get Russia to then deploy more forces into here to counter this. Legends, again. I hope that you're having a fantastic day, looking after yourselves. Continue to do what we can to report as truthfully, as honestly as we can. Look after yourselves. Have a fantastic night. Have a fantastic day, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Or actually later today. Look after yourselves. Bye-bye.